First of all, I want to get away from the dictionary definition of a constitution. A constitution must have purpose, and the purpose must be to create a nation that conduces to the greatest happiness of the greatest number of people. That is what a constitution must be. And having set the objective of the constitution, you then frame a constitution to achieve that objective.
Because we really do have a race problem. Those divisions are real. We see it in our politics, we see it in our trade union. We see that they take the divisions with them. Look at where people live in this US. You have enclaves in the Bronx and in Richmond Hill and in Brooklyn. They're taking the division with them.
Women are dying in the streets, and we have a government pontificator running around campaigning for women's vote. No women should vote in this election coming up unless there is something done to the legislation, as Magistrate Kim is advocating.
That voices like ours that are not in the political trench fighting it out, voices like ours should become stronger. One of the things about the Caribbean is that we have never had one discourse. Bass will know the days of the New World and the Old World and the radical left and so on. What we had was this concourse of ideas, which I think in the early days of independence pushed us in a certain direction. We've got to move back to that point of having these multiple discourses.
Okay, you guys can begin now.
Good evening. Good evening to you, Ruqayyah. How are you?
Good evening, Dr. Mahadeo. I'm fine, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. And let's thank the Globespan people, the team, Mr. Nohar Singh and Devin, for being there with us and for giving us all the support for us to get this done.
And to our viewers out there this evening joining with us as well, a pleasant evening to you, and thank you for joining.
Wonderful. Well, let me start the ball rolling. You know, Ruqayyah, and to our viewers out there, viewers, fellow Guyanese from home and abroad, it's a distinct pleasure to join this team in this presentation of the people's voice. You know, as many of us know, Guyana has been an independent country since 1966, an amazingly long time. However, to most Guyanese, freedom and evolution seem to have been at a pause. For over 50 years, many people, you know, they cry out. 50 years we have lived under lawlessness, corruption, decadent politics and politicians. And even in 2019, we are at another sad juncture of our history. Now, there has been many concerns about like the no confidence motion, the state of governance, the poor state of our economy, poor infrastructure in the country, particularly electricity and telecoms. And of course, I think what interests us more is the lot of the poor people. What do we do here on that can chart a different course for our country and our people? As I said, most people are tired of 53 years deadlocked by the current political parties, the current politicians, and all the unbridled thirst for power. But I think what we want to achieve here, Ruqayyah and I and the entire Globespan team, we want to capture the thoughts, imagination, and expressions of the people of this country. We are going to dissect the problems. We are going to look at what problems face us on a day-to-day basis. We're going to debate with the politicians and the politics of the day. We are not creating a new movement, but we certainly want to find solutions. There is a problem. What do the people of this country feel might be plausible and acceptable solutions going forward? So let our courses begin. And as I said in the beginning, I'm honored to be here with this team, and especially Ruqayyah, who has been, you know, beauty with brains, to use a tired expression. But Ruqayyah has been an inspiration to many people. She has had a deep interest in how we can position our young people to work together. And that is from my heart too. So over to you, Ruqayyah. Let us see what's your interest for this program and what we can do together.
Well, like I said earlier, I'm very happy to be a part of tonight's conversation and discussion and to be invited onto this platform to share my views and also hear from the views of those that are looking and tuned in this evening. The voice of the people's voice, or the voice of the people, it's definitely something that, a sentiment that resonates well with me, because that's where I stand. Usually it is for the people, by the people, and for country first. So my views are never for one side or the other. It is always in the best interest of how we as a nation, I come from the space of the millennials, so to speak, but how we as that cross-section of society can come together, like you rightfully said, and really join forces and work towards making our country a better place. Because we have so many things that are happening currently and that we could look forward to in the near future. So we really have to be in a position where we can really come together and, cut all the differences that we have been experiencing year after year after year since independence, and just work towards our future goals in unison. So some of those things we will be touching on, in addition to some current affairs. I know we'll be touching on this evening, and looking forward to the views of all of those tuned in this evening to, correspond with and also share in this space.
Yeah. And I think one other thing we may add, it's of interest to the world to see what is happening in Guyana. Not only Guyanese at home and abroad are interested in what's happening on these shores, but the world is watching. The world is watching every step we take, because we are poised to be among the richest countries in the world, providing we stop capital flight, providing we are able to stop the poor contracts and poor management of contracts from continuing. So those are some of our interests, and we're looking forward to this discussion. I think Devin might want to get some of the discussion points, because what we are looking at is the news headline that would have been there during the past week, to dissect them, to see how we can debate them further and take them up and have discussion and have comments, and to encourage our viewers, send your comments. Let's hear what you have to say. This is about the people's voice.
That's right. So on that, Dr. Mahadeo, one of the most recent events on these shores, as you may have heard of, the minibus incident that occurred, that road accident that happened in New Hope. I'm going to pull from a newspaper article just to recap for persons who may not be aware of what the story is about. So it was the minibus driver who's dead and 11 injured in an eastbound collision. Passengers were trapped, and this is a collision that happened between a minibus and a 4x4 pickup vehicle that left this one minibus driver injured. And actually the minibus driver passed, and the 11 seriously injured. So now all the persons in this incident, they've been admitted to the GPHC. This is the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation. And several of them have already been taken into the theater for urgent surgeries. Now, dead is a 59-year-old Oswald Roberts of Kurukuru, Susdag District, and he was the driver of a Route 42 minibus, which plied the Georgetown to Mary route. And the accident is said to have occurred just around 6:30 hours in the morning in the New Hope village. And this incident occurred in collision with a BWW29, well, these are specifics, a 4x4 pickup that was heading to Georgetown, driven by a 45-year-old Lusignan male driver. So this collision happened. Eyewitnesses said that after the collision, public-spirited citizens set about rescuing screaming passengers from the minibus wreckage. And one lady, I actually saw visuals of this in a video. It was very horrific when I saw the video that my sister shared with me. There was one lady trapped in the front seats. I'm not going to go into details, but one person's leg was hanging here, and very, very horrific graphic scenes. And in addition to that, they were stating that the driver of the pickup seemed to have been under the influence of alcohol. So this is one of the stories coming out of news in recent times, very, very current, and it's still ongoing conversation happening as it relates to road laws and traffic and the speeding. That's a constant conversation. So that's one of the stories we'll be getting into.
Correct, and I think the question has been asked. It's a repetitive theme.
Yes.
Are there adequate laws? Are there adequate not just driving and the rules of the road, but speed limits and all of that? I can tell you as a person who's I'm on the road quite frequently, traveling to all parts of the country. I'm neither here nor there on the speed limits. What I do know is that what matters more than the limits are the courtesy of the users of the road. Gone are the days when we are courteous to each other as drivers. Nowadays, you drive on the road at night. There are some people who believe that it's their right, and maybe it is, but they believe it's their right to put their high beam on in your face and would never dip, would never give you the low beam. And so, those common courtesies, I believe, are more of the things that probably the instructing schools need to start concentrating on. There are speed limits in various areas, and as we know, a lot of drivers have expressed concerns that where the speed limit changes, there is not enough warning to the drivers, and there's a police just ahead when the limit changes, right? So you're always caught. But to the point, I think the other thing that I would like to ask our viewers and ask Guyanese generally to look at is, of course, not just the courtesy extended by drivers to a driver to another driver, but the care that accidents will happen, but the care that people extend to victims of an accident. It's sad but true. We're more interested in taking out our phone and capturing what's happening.
That is true.
Rather than giving a hand. Now I know that to your point, Ruqayyah, I know that a lot of viewers, are online at this moment, and I've seen some questions come to us, and most of the questions seem to be, what's your take on the present deadlock with the government and GCOM, and so I can see where people's interests are. But at the end of the day, this is also an important paradigm. That is the way we live, the way we use our roads, the way we use the services that we have. It's extremely important. And it goes to the bigger picture because, hey, it's not a government that's running this country. It's we, the people of this country, must remind the government we're running them. And until that changes, we can't get anywhere.
Yeah, and I mean, there are laws against speeding and reckless driving, and I do believe there can be more enforcement when it comes to these things. Like Parliament needs to pass stricter laws with mandatory penalties for hurting or killing passengers, because here we have a whole, like almost half of a bus load with passengers who knows how they might end up by the time they're done with the hospital and the checkups and whatnot. So definitely, my take on it would be definitely inculcating mandatory penalties for either hurting or killing passengers. And passengers need to speak up. Now, I like to say that I'm like a professional passenger. I do have a license, I do drive, but passengers need to speak up. I've been in a lot of instances where you're on the roadways and drivers may be going at a certain rate and passengers are just there holding on for dear life, hoping that they're just going to slow down. And in the same space, they may say something, passengers may say something, and then the drivers have more of an attitude than the passengers. So it's really a two-way street where you're trying to speak up and then the driver's not listening to you. But at the end of the day, it's still your life, and you really have to put your foot down when it comes to the way your life is handled in these situations. So passengers need to speak up and even stop and disembark if you're in situations where buses are carrying on at a race like that. And I do think that one of the things that could be inculcated is drivers facing mandatory jail and permanent revocation of their driving privileges for deaths or injuries as a direct result of accident due to reckless driving and speeding. Because I feel like maybe the laws and maybe how it's being done isn't forceful enough to make persons, just adhere to certain limitations and whatnot, because we're having constant accidents and I don't see it minimizing. I see it happening on a day-to-day basis where this is happening. This fatalities are just here and there. So I think something definitely needs to be done in that regard.
Correct. And I think we agree on that point. Something has to be done. And I think also, we can agree on the point that it cannot be left to the authorities alone. It cannot be left to the police alone. It has to be, people has to take responsibility for driving on the road, for using the roadways, and please take responsibility for the lives you carry and the lives that could be impacted by your driving on the road.
Yeah, most definitely. So we also have, I know I see someone saying here, they could not understand why newspapers always withhold names of those drivers with accidents like these when they happen. I do think in a situation like that, when because situations like this will now call for like an investigation to occur, and in ongoing investigations, unless someone is charged with something, I think it's within their right to have that information withheld to the question there.
You're right. And I see one of our viewers also has commented that the law should also penalize the pedestrians. And there are laws in place that if enforced, could take action on every road user, regardless of whether you're in a vehicle or not. So that is a good point, that the enforceability of the laws with regards to pedestrian using of the road. I mean, I think, Ruqayyah, you will recall a few months ago, some child was struck.
Yes.
Right.
The East Coast that was the East Coast situation with that truck, I think.
And on the divider, I think it happened, right? So,
yes.
So again, the debate is up as to whether the pedestrian was equally responsible for the unfortunate unfolding of events that happened. But at the end of the day, accidents are such a waste, not just of materials and money, but life. And we need to value life a little bit more.
So we have more comments coming in here.
Also, look at a number of other things. As you said, Ruqayyah, on the minibus and the hire car issues, people must be empowered and must know that the law is on their side to get out of a vehicle. You can tell a driver, stop, I need to get out of this vehicle. You do not have to place your life at risk. So we all take responsibility.
Yeah, and they have some passengers in situations where you go to a park or you get in a minibus, and some passengers would actually be, I don't know if they're late or what, but actually would would kind of add to the overcrowding of buses, even though they know it's wrong. They would actually be a part of the problem, because they would see a bus that's filled to capacity and still trying to get a little squeeze in, and being a part of the problem. And you have to know that part of your rights is kind of not vindicated if you are in an accident and the bus is overloaded. You will not be able to exercise all of your rights in that situation just because you would have been in an overloaded hire car or a bus, so to speak. This is like in terms of for the civilians, so to speak. And I saw a comment here I saw one comment here talking about, let me see here. The public has a role to play. Passengers need to stop sitting down and see the recklessness. Yes, that's what I was referring to. Or simply put, enjoy the ride. How you can sit in a speeding bus, for example, and say nothing. But it goes both ways, because sometimes you as a passenger, you say something, and the minibus, the driver or the conductor has more of an issue with you just for speaking up for your rights. But what happens then is that everyone else that is as a collective should really hold one ground and let right be done in that situation. But that's not the collective just yet. We're getting there. I see it happen sometimes. in some situations, but it's not always happening. And then situations like this occur where we have an incident, and we didn't even get into the part where there is this pickup driver and under the influence of alcohol. That's another situation, because it's 6 a.m., a little past 6, people are going to work in the morning, and this driver is allegedly under the influence of alcohol.
Correct. Well, the thing is too, I think, one of our viewers, Danny Narayan, has said, more public education is needed. And I support that totally. More public education is needed. And maybe, safe driving and safe use of the roads doesn't need to be confined to only a driver's education program. But it should also go to, probably secondary schools. There should be some, program or some strategy that is being worked out. I noticed that another of our viewer, I think, Promoter Skeet, has also recommended that the cameras that have been put up, I think those billion-dollar cameras should be put to such use to track. And one of the ideas we can look at, is there a facility at the police headquarters or anywhere in the country, or maybe we can set something of the police, of course, where passengers or the general public can make complaints about dangerous driving, and it can be investigated. You don't persecute or prosecute people wantonly, but you can investigate and see how it can be handled. But I think the general public should have an ability to deposit somewhere a complaint. There should be a complaint mechanism about people who have disregard for the road and for the users or the users.
Definitely. I'm seeing some more comments coming here as it relates to the topic about law enforcement without fear or favor, and the alliances that comes. I believe passengers report these drivers. They should be brought before the court and made to pay some fines unless these drivers are being punished. Only then we can start seeing changes. And which goes back to my initial point about drivers facing mandatory jail or permanent revocation of their driving privileges for deaths or injuries as a direct result of accidents, whether it be due to reckless driving or speeding. Because I feel like some drivers, because they feel like they just maybe get away with it and whatnot, they just continue.
Correct.
But
it is a fact too that, look, the drivers who have been found guilty of careless or dangerous driving, they are put through the courts. They are, in some cases, where there is a fatality, they are held. They are held pending trial. So the penalties in terms of the serious accidents are there, but we need to bridge that gap of what Danny said, for example, of bridging the education or the requirement for people to learn how to use the road better rather than wait for when something bad happens. And, Kevindra has said that there is a genuine collision with drivers and police authority. And so his opinion is drivers disregard the basic traffic rules and regulations. I like to throw one of this out there. I know a lot of drivers in Guyana may have had this moment in their lives many times. You're driving on the road, you're going to Berbice or West Dem or somewhere, and all of a sudden a police vehicle pulls in front of you and starts to drive at maybe 10 km below the speed limit. But you cannot overtake them, because if you attempt to overtake them, they are going to stop you, especially, if they do have their lights on and so forth. So they see that as enforcement, but it doesn't serve any purpose, because the moment they pull off, everybody just races away. So education is important. I think also the other recommendation we have had come in is there should be a drop box. There should be some mechanism where people can lodge complaints about errant drivers and those who have disregard of the road and its users and stuff like that. And I think we can move ahead from that.
Yes, I'm I'm on you with that. I was also thinking about like the way we respond to certain situations as civilians. Like for instance, this accident would have occurred, and persons would have been trying to assist persons from the wreckage and whatnot. I do also think that we could do something about educating ourselves on how to respond to certain disaster type situations or like cases like this, because there is a way in which you do these things, and you don't want to add to the injury of persons that may have been in a situation like this. I mean, under the circumstances, we understand that we're all trying to help the situation, but we do, as civilians, can do a little bit of, education on how we can respond to certain situations, because we cannot avoid these things in its entirety. It's prone to happen at some point or the other. So just the way and how we manage when certain things like this occur.
Correct. I must say though, as we're on the topic of road users, I mean, we often beat the police up, but I must say, in my own personal evaluation, I don't know if you would agree with me, but I must say that barring one or two of the officers out there, generally, over the years, I've seen policemen becoming increasingly courteous. Some of them, again, barring the couple of them, but generally, most of them are extremely courteous, and we're always going to get problems of disagreeing with their views. But I think that more and more, hopefully, we can get back to the stage where we see police and police service as a help, as an aid to public, rather than as a irritation to our existence, and of course they have to believe in themselves for that too.
Okay,
so I don't know if we can move off. We can pick this up again later. We can undertake to follow up with the police as to the complaint mechanism, and maybe the next week we can see what would have transpired on that front. I think one of the other topics that we want to discuss that has been of extremely heated debates across the country would have been the one with the Haitians, and
Yes.
it's like the Martians have landed, so the Haitians Haitians are here.
Definitely a hot topic right now.
So if I can take the forerunning here, it is something very serious. I mean, the truth is that it goes back to the political thinking, the political divide in this country, and there is a genuine fear in a good part of the population that the Haitians are coming, or these people are coming, or whoever it is coming, and it coincides with the house-to-house registration, and so the padding of the voters list are going to happen. What is of concern to me, Ruqayyah, is a problem has been highlighted, or a suspicion has been raised that there is a heavy influx of people from certain countries into this country. We'll get into more details just now, but I think also the critical thing here is the response of the government. I mean, my own opinion is that all I have seen is a defense. It's like as if, okay, there's a suspicion that this house-to-house padding is going to happen and blah, blah, but all it is that's coming is a defense. I don't see a genuine discussion taking place. It's been regaled under racism. It's been taken to the corners of us against them. It's been taken to house to house padding of voters. But nobody is explaining this thing. I'm sorry to be ranting, but I've heard Minister Jordan say, I think on his press conference of July 27th, that he has seen Brazilians and Cubans and Nigerians and Haitians getting jobs in Guyana. And I'm thinking, well, I think Guyana has a fair amount of unemployment. But he said that he is not speaking lies. I quote, "I'm not speaking lies. You can have Haitian carpenters, Brazilian carpenters, and plumbers, and so on." And Jordan opined that Guyanese are demanding high wages, hence the job often goes to those foreigners who are willing to accept lesser salaries. Now, why I raise this angle, Ruqayyah, is there are certain labor laws in this country that, regardless of where you're from, regardless of what mechanism you go through to be employed, there's a minimum wage. There are statutory deductions, contributions to NIS, for example, that it doesn't matter whether a person is willing to accept a lesser salary job, to quote the minister. What matters is that the mechanisms are being enforced, that whoever is working in whatever job, they should follow the laws of the country. In addition, don't forget the more important factors of health and safety. You cannot bring persons into the country and have them work under unsafe or hazardous conditions because other Guyanese refuse to work there. So that's one. And I noticed Roy Kingston commented with a very apt comment too, that the concerns with persons being registered, you have to live in the country a minimum period before you can become a citizen, and we'll get into that later.
Yes.
But those are the concerns with regards to Jordan's comment about Haitians or other people coming to work. And let me add this. Combating Trafficking in Persons Act 2005 has a clear definition of abuse of position of vulnerability and a clear definition of trafficking in persons. But my concern, as I said, is that the labor laws, the minimum wage, moved in 2017 from $35,000 to $44,200, which to our American viewers, that's about $200 American dollars, and an hourly rate of Guyana dollars $2.55 or US dollars $1.15. So there are health concerns, infrastructural demands, and so forth and so on. But I can pause there and let's hear some views.
We're hearing the views on the Haitians right now. The whole Haitian situation. I'll call it for how I see it, and I see it as xenophobia and racism, the whole Haitian situation. That's literally as blank as I could put it, based on how I see the response, everything that's been peddled in the media, the angles in which it's been peddled. That's basically the angle that I see it being peddled as. And it's unfortunate, especially given our current political climate, that this becomes another onset, that Haitians, our CARICOM brothers and sisters, are somewhat being made into political scapegoats. And I really feel like, given everything, all things considered, that we as Guyanese, when we go to these different countries, you can find a Guyanese in every single country on the planet. As based on my travels, I've met a Guyanese in every single country. And I think that when we've had situations with other nationals entering Guyana, there's not been such an outcry from our civil society. I've not seen the outcry in the media. I've not seen the outcry in civil society as much as it has been for Haitians. And I wanted to pull out from an article I see. I want to quote, as you would have quoted, one person in politics. I wanted to quote, I think it was an article I saw with the Prime Minister speaking on it. Just wanted to share what I read here. That they're not coming to Guyana illegally. They're citizens of CARICOM member states, and they have benefited from an immigration order that was unanimously approved by regional heads of government in July last year, to allow them an automatic 6-month stay in all CARICOM member states. I agree with the comments that was shared earlier, that, let me just see if I could pull it up here real quickly, that Roy Kingston shared, that a person should live in the country a minimum of 5 years before becoming a citizen. Even if this is the case if it were a Haitian or Cuban or Venezuelan, I agree with that in terms of being able to be a part of our political space, and as well as our working space.
But Ruqayyah, let me ask you this. So I share your view. I have nothing against the Haitians or the Cubans, or Guyana needs to have a large population. before we can move past the kind of things that's happening presently. But
Yes.
one of the key concerns that have been expressed has been the minimum wage, has been the health and safety. If they are finding jobs in Guyana and if they're working here, because another view that was expressed, as you know, is that they're basically using Guyana as a stepping stone and they're going to Brazil and going to Suriname and so forth. But if they're working here, then there has to be a concern for their well-being, for their wages, for their contribution to the health system in the country, to the social security system, for their own health and safety at the workplace. Not because you're Haitians or Venezuelans or whoever it is, you should be mistreated by any employer. The basic, I think Kevindra has said it well, that the basic salary structure and salary scale for all category of workers must apply. If we don't, then you're promoting a breach of labor laws and supposing the other employers do the same. But let me also say this, that I think the Guyana Chronicle of August 4th listed that there was a number of persons that came from various countries, 45,000 Americans, 2,900 Barbadians, 5,000 Brazilians, I'm just calling round numbers, 2,500 British, 12,000 Canadians, 41,000 Cubans, 8,000 Haitians, and so forth and so on, a total of 135,200. But you see, Ruqayyah, what I said earlier, I think prevails. Now, the Guyana Chronicle could have produced this, right?
Yes.
They printed a list of countries that visitors or travelers came from. They can also produce a list of the stated intended address. So if all of these people came, and if any percentage is still here, having no bias for anyone, where are they? And are they in safe and secure environment? So I would like to call on the authorities to let us see, use their immigration slips and let us see where the people are staying or who's taking care of them, and let the Labor Ministry make a stand that if these people are working in the country, then they are going to ensure that the labor laws are being followed.
Okay, so again, I noticed you mentioned health a lot in reference to the situation with the Haitians. But when there was the situation with Venezuela, I mean, Venezuela had no medicine, the healthcare system was crumbling, and Venezuelans and Guyanese, they flooded into Guyana following the political and economic crisis and when that was happening, I did not, as an onlooker, I didn't see that trigger a health scare. But this influx of Haitians automatically means that we are at a risk of contracting diseases. And that was one of my concerns. I had a concern with that type of narrative being peddled by the different entities that would have been peddling it. And from that is where I started forming my perspective on this, because at the end of the day, they are CARICOM brothers and sisters. And if we can take in the other spaces, be it the Venezuelans, the Cubans, I have some statistics here as well when it comes to the past 7 months being reported here by a few media entities that I could refer to. It states for the first 7 months of, I think this is the Guyana Chronicle. Yeah, this is the Guyana Chronicle here. And let me see if I could date to this. This is actually today's newspaper. I'm just going to date it for reference. Yes, it's stating that for the first 7 months of 2019, Cuban nationals entering Guyana have outnumbered other regional travelers, including Haitians, by several thousands.
Right.
And that there's been much debate regarding the arrival figures of nationals of the sister Caribbean community, Haiti, in other sections of the media. And emphasis is placed on Haitians. The statistics tell a different story, and that these stats released by the Department of Citizenship revealed that for the first 7 months of the year, a total of 41,272 Cuban nationals came to Guyana via Cheddi Jagan International Airport, outnumbering by almost 33,000 the 8,476 Haitians who came. I know you also spoke to having their intended address being documented as part of where you'd want to see it come into play.
You know why?
Go ahead.
let me tell you this. You know why I'm interested in that? Because I know, and a lot of people know, those Cubans, for example, and let me correct you with something. While the politicians may not have said something, I don't know, and I really didn't follow up then, they may
Okay.
not have made a fuss to your point about whether the Venezuelans came. But, there are people like me who have always made those statements to be concerned about contributions to health and safety, to be concerned about the population and the changing population face and so on. But to the point here, here is one of the problems we have. The the the, the Cubans, for example, when they come, it is a concern. There are 4, 5, 6 persons staying in one room in a hotel, and mind you, there has to be insurance concerned. So this is not my point here, Ruqayyah, is not against who's coming. I really don't have a problem with who's coming or who's not coming. What I have a problem with is to follow the laws of the country, to ensure that when these people come, they can feel safe, they can feel respected, and they can be encouraged to follow the laws that we follow. And also be given the umbrella of the laws that we are sheltered under. So that's where I'm coming from. I mean, I'm not getting into or I haven't gotten into the political arguments or any of those types. There's enough out there. But we got to look at, to your earlier point, how we're treated when we go outside vis-a-vis how we treat people when they come here. And, the laws that would be governing how people stay in hotels, I mean, and I'm talking, for example, I don't know about the Haitians where they stay, but I do know raising a concern 3 years ago or 2 years ago when there was a massive influx of Cubans into the country, and I believe and I still maintain that their stay in some hotels were extremely below par.
Yeah, I understand. And Guyana does need to adopt sensible immigration laws, adequate social welfare and robust healthcare policies to deal with threats or issues that come from any group. And I mean any group of migrants entering Guyana. My concern has only been, and I know this is not where your narrative stems from, but my concern has only been how it's been perpetuated, the racism and the xenophobia that's been coming out of it and being pushed as, who knows, I don't want to say like a political agenda, so to speak, in any way, but that's how, as from looking onward, that it's been coming out to me. Because for me, I'm just on the outside looking in, seeing where this story is playing out to be. I want to quote something by a colleague of mine from university that actually she made a post about it. I know there's some more comments coming in here. I just want to have other views being shared here as we converse on this one. She mentioned, this is coming from an Elsie Harry. She mentioned that elections may be a major concern right now, but we still need good governance. And, Guyana cannot grind to a halt while political entities sort out their squabble. The government needs to issue an advisory on its policies for dealing with the influx of immigrants from everywhere. If there is no policy, this is the time to sit down and adopt an interim one and have all parties involved cooperate to this end and have that process continue from that. That was her comment towards, part of her comment towards this I wanted to share, because I think she made a point here that was very relevant to the discussion.
Correct. But Ruqayyah, do you think this entire argument would be put to bed or could be put to bed if there was an assessment or an evaluation by the relevant ministry on the arrival statistics and the departure statistics? So it's easy for me to say 45,000 Americans came and 41,000 Cubans came and 700 Indians came, but how many of them have left? Because if they go through a port to go elsewhere, then there would be records from the port, and it's all easily reconcilable, and it would take away suspicion. It would remove fear mongering. It would.
So you'd like to see the documentation basically through and through to that regard.
Yeah.
But what's funny though? Like you mentioned, like how many have left, but like if I take a walk down Regent Street, the nationalities I see are not really Haitians. Like, I haven't really bumped in, and Haitians are French speaking. I haven't bumped into any Haitians since I've been hearing this talk of Haitians, and I've been looking around like, where are the Haitians? Like, I need to meet me some Haitian brothers and sisters just to say hi or something. I have personally, I'm just speaking from my personal experience, I haven't seen any Haitians. My sister and I were just walking down Regent Street recently, and I'm like, the whole nationality, like the landscape of Regent Street has changed drastically, because I'm seeing Cubans, I can hear Spanish, I know Portuguese, I'm hearing the Brazilians, I'm hearing the Venezuelans, I'm hearing the Cubans, but I'm not seeing these Haitians. So, I mean, I get the point to the documentation, and I understand that position.
And remove all
and I think it's necessary. I think it's necessary, but across the board, in terms of all nationals coming into Guyana, I think it's necessary that we have that. But just me personally, I haven't seen. So for me, I'm like, I don't know where they're at, because I haven't seen them. I'm yet to see one or two Haitians. I've seen the reports, but I personally haven't seen these Haitians that we're talking about.
Correct. And this is why I believe the reconciliation is important, because it will just remove the bedrock that seemed to be teeming with suspicion and all the negatives. And, we move on from it, But I think also, Ruqayyah, we can spin this around.
Yeah.
Guyana does need, I think, for my personal views, for Guyana to really move on, we probably need a couple of million people here.
Yes.
We have a, for lack of a better word, in my view, we have a tired set of politicians rotating, going around motions.
You got me there. You got me there on that one, because I'm like, this generation where we be like, y'all just talking the same things over and over. Like, where's the fresh meat?
I think it's time that we have more. I think it's time we have more women in politics. I think it's time we empower more youths into active participation in national strategies and national politics. I think it's time we move beyond. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm surprised at some of the arguments that are placed out there in the political domain. But I feel there needs to be a more open ability to agree or disagree with whoever is in power.
Well, you spoke on women, so I mean, we just had the Justice Claudette Singh, in her new post as the first woman to chair GCOM. So there's one woman there. I mean, GCOM is its own independent body, and we're definitely getting into house-to-house registration topic just now.
Correct.
Because I know that's the next topic we're gonna get into.
Indeed, and I think all congratulations to Madam Justice, Claudette Singh. She has a very good history. She's a well-respected legal luminary in this country. I think my mind goes back to her large, voluminous write-up on her decision on the Esther Pereira case many years ago. So she would have heard election petition in her former life as an active legal practitioner, as a judge. And so she certainly would know that in her new role, she set precedents in the past, So it was interesting to see how she charted her own course. And I think hats off to her. She's a brave and respectable person. And to your point, yes, it's heartening to see women being entrusted with more and more leadership positions in this country.
I see a question here by Mr. Benz. What's the panel's view on the need for generational change in Guyana's leadership? That's a good one.
Yeah, it's like you're wondering when can we see when can we create platforms to have our youngsters, to have your young people come out and live their dreams. I still hanker for a Guyana that can have those things happen. Maybe it's one of the things we should do is to have term limits on all members of the National Assembly. You can only serve for 1 or 2 terms and then bye.
But we do have you mean in terms of politicians and not the actual because I was just about to say we do have term limits on party, so to speak. But
Yeah,
then
yeah. No,
generational, well,
you don't
I'm a huge advocate for that,
you
generational
don't
change.
have term limit. The only term limit you have is on the president. Um,
Yes, the presidency.
but parties can get back into power. But maybe there should be there. We should start something to ask people's view about whether the National Assembly itself should have term limit.
Well, I definitely will say that I'm one that advocates for generational change. I do, however, I don't advocate for it in the sense whereby you just eliminate those who've been there, those who have come with the experience and knowledge base. But I do feel because of we live in a very technological, advanced age, the era of information, where things are moving at such a fast pace, and there's so many different technologies and advancements happening that. And the energy that is necessary for the energy of the youth to come forward and really help drive the different tasks and the different agendas for our country forward going into this new decade that we have coming up. So definitely Guyana first, to Samuel Pearson, Guyana first, race aside, generational change where youths assert themselves and work hand in hand with those who would have had the expertise. However, I haven't seen, I see it from time to time. We talk about this. A lot of politicians talk about it, but like if I'm to say I'm seeing it, I have not seen those platforms being created across the board properly for youth really taking that torch forward. It's been created in some spaces, some very private spaces, but to that level, I'm still looking forward to see such happen. Definitely an advocate for generational change. We need the energy of the youth. You and I, Dr. Mahadeo, we're still considered. I know you're still considered the youth. They say youth is is how you feel. So
Correct.
it's how you feel in this regard.
But
Yes.
you see, I think one of the things we can do, we should, Guyana should somehow or the other, and maybe Ruqayyah, you and I can reach out to a couple of the politicians because can can we ask them? We should ask, and we will ask. Do they plan to put into their their manifestos? Do they
Yes.
plan to put in their manifestos the percentiles of male, female, of young, old? Do they plan to put a fair representation of all races? I have said openly, and I still believe this, the day, and let me say this very clearly, the day that the PNCR can consider featuring another race as their head, and the day that the PPPC can consider featuring another race as their head, might be the day this country can probably move on. Until such a time, we're all going to go for a kith and kin, and it's taking us nowhere. It's just continuing to allowing us to continue this vicious cycle. And you know who are the losers at the end of the day, Ruqayyah?
The people.
At the end of the day, I firmly believe the politicians, 65 of them, sit in parliament. They argue. On the face of it, they disagree, but they are esteemed and honorable colleagues. But
Of course.
At the end of the day, you and I, Linden and Berbice, Demerara and Esco, you and I have to heal our wounds and live together. That is what we need to address. Why allow them to upset us with this thing called race when we can stop it and nip it in the bud?
Well, I'll say this: I don't trust the politicians for as far as I can show them. So I don't trust. I feel like, and the thing is, like, I always believe in every space that you should be the epitome of what it is that you embody. If you're a politician, be a politician. Like, there's some politicians I respect because they embody what it means to be a politician, and there are others that I may have no regard for. But all together, politicians are politicians. Many persons that know of me outside of different spaces, they know me as the one love girl. So I definitely agree with your sentiments about unity and coming together and really embodying what our motto is about. I don't want to be too utopic about it, so to speak, but it's definitely a work in progress that we can come together and continuously work towards attaining today and in the near future, young and old, Barbies, Linden, left, right, everybody, because it's definitely something that requires everyone's input. But the people have to recognize that they really have the power to affect that type of change. When it comes down to voting, it comes down to being aware of what's happening. It comes down to being aware of the laws of your land. So many different things it comes down to. But people need to educate themselves. They just can't sit back and expect politicians to work miracles for them, or the government to work. The government of the day, whether it's the opposition or the current party, to work wonders for you. You have to really take charge of how you want to see your future unfold, and that's by being active in the day-to-day proceedings of your country.
Correct. I know we're really running out of time.
So 5 minutes left. We haven't touched on the other subjects yet.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful evening. A couple of things that I'd like to make comments quickly in passing is, the house thing is something of great and grave concern. But I do know that there'll be a decision coming out very soon. So maybe we can put a cap on that one for now.
Yeah.
But there are some other things that we can probably queue up for next week, providing our team can agree on them. And of course, a couple of them might include, this whole paradigm of parties getting together for shared governance, as Samuel Peterson is saying. Whether it is something that we can contemplate, whether the people of this country can contemplate accepting a shared governance paradigm, knowing that most of the politicians may not accept it, because Guyana's politics, unfortunately, is winner takes all. So those are some of the things we can probably queue up for next week. But it's been great to be here. I think we're just down to a couple minutes more to go.
8:56.
Yeah, and if I may just, the house-to-house registration is something that we didn't get to discuss, and also, of course, that whole paradigm of the Constitution and 106, Article 106, I think 106.6, and all those technical things that we can probably go into another time. But I'd like to quickly comment on a few very pertinent things. I've seen people make a call, that boycott certain businesses, or boycott this, or boycott that, or this whole thing with race, and like what you said, the Haitian thing might have gone into the paradigm of race. Let's take some time and assess. If I am calling on people to boycott Ruqayyah's business, Ruqayyah might have employed people of all races. Ruqayyah is paying taxes, is a taxpayer in the country, and is a contributor to NIS and all of that. So by calling these, I call them short-sighted, knee-jerk reaction, they're going to do no one good. What we must do is inventing our anger against those who seek to divide us. We must find ways that we can come together. So it's been wonderful, and it's been good to see so many people send us their comments. And I'm sorry that we didn't get to answer all the questions being asked. I noticed
it's not a poll, by the way, for those do you agree with house-to-house registration? Just mentioning that for those that wanted to share their views. Correct.
So certainly we can get into some of the more topical issues next week. I am looking at a couple more comments that says both political parties touted their commitment to improvement of youths, but there has been no change.
Comments. Yeah. I wish I had the time to address that one.
Yeah.
I'm definitely on that person's side there.
Yeah, I've seen another comment where we seem to be riding on a little bit of probably some toes, in terms of race and stuff. But you expect all of this. We are just hoping to have a frank and open, respectful discussion.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Well,
yes, for those, since I didn't get the chance to just say my bit, I wanted to thank the Globespan family for inviting me for this evening's discourse as well, and to be in your presence, Dr. Mahadeo, to share. Also to our viewers, I just wanted to express my gratitude for being on this platform and sharing in this space this evening. Hopefully,
Thank you. Thank you. And I would like to close by saying that, we're going to be looking ahead to the coming week or weeks with some anticipation, because, there's a determination in the court that is due. There's the discussion of the expiry of government and what is the status after that date. There are concerns expressed by the population about contracts being signed. I'm happy to see the AG Basil Williams today made a comment that, so certain contracts that, is the regular day-to-day affair will have to be undertaken, but they're not envisaging entering into any long-term or material contracts that affects the country one way or the other. Mind you, I think what we need to put out there, Ruqayyah, is that when we make statements, for example, that the determination of the status of the government after September 18th, it does not presume that this government will win or lose the next election. It just looks at the question of the status of government and governance after a constitutional date has been passed. But I know we're going to get into all of that, and it's been wonderful being with you, Ms. Boyer, Ruqayyah. It's been wonderful. Thanks to the Globespan team for having us. And we're going to be seeing you all again next Monday at 8 p.m.
Oh,
And
we are?
Just before you guys close off, we would just like to announce the results of the poll. The question was, do you agree with house-to-house registration? 25% said yes, and 75% said no. Thank you.
Okay.
Wonderful. Well, there you go. With that little poll we ran, 75% disagree with
wow. I'd love to hear the reasons for these numbers, but time doesn't permit.
Correct. So thank you, and the Globespan team, and to our technical operator, Devin. Thank you so very much. It's been wonderful to be here. And good night, everyone. Good going, Diana. Let's keep up the heat on the politicians.
Boys.